friend Jimmy Dore went on Tucker this week. So is the Bernie Sanders voting Democrat now a member of the far right? And what does it mean when the only place on the mainstream media where Jimmy Dore can go is Fox News? Hello there, you 5.7 million awakening wonders. Thank you for joining me on this voyage towards truth, where we look at complex information from a variety of sources, bring them together and see what coalesces. Now, we talk about the mainstream media all the time, don't we? We talk about how defunct it is, how immoral it is, how the way that it's funded is complex and prevents it from conveying the kind of truth and even the kind of complexity that we are all entitled to hear and to try to understand. Today, I want to talk to you about Jimmy Dore appearing on Tucker Carlson. Isn't it interesting that Tucker Carlson is the only person that have like Glenn Greenwald on? He's the only person that will attack big business. And lots of you that are like left-leaning or Democrat in your previous biases or just in your persuasion will think that Tucker Carlson maybe is what did someone call him once? A human boat shoe. A lot of people don't care for Tucker Carlson. But what interests me is that Fox News used to be a channel that we continually berated and baited when it was like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and all those guys. We used to torment them about their stance on numerous issues. But nowadays, if you want a channel that's going to criticize big business, big tech, big corporations, mainstream media generally and broadly, peculiarly, you're most likely to find that on Fox News. Why don't we have a leftist mainstream media outlet that would showcase a voice like Jimmy Dore's? Why is that? What has become of the left? If you don't subscribe to our channel already, subscribe to it now, and please turn on the notification bell to ensure that you see our new content. We upload a new video every single day, and they're all, without question, fantastic. Now let's get into this one.
No, for sure is that Vladimir Putin did it. Shut up, traitor, he did.
Even in his intro, Tucker Carlson is one of the few dissenting voices around the narratives around Putin and Russia. It used to be that demands for patriotism and an unblinking, unflinching, blind obedience to patriotic narratives was also the domain of the right. Strange the way things change.
Jimmy Dore is the host of the Jimmy's Dore Show.
Jimmy's Dore Show.
Jimmy's Dore Show.
Like a show that Jimmy does about doors.
He joins us tonight. Now, are you keeping a list of all the things Putin is doing?
Russia's very powerful. They control a lot of things. They overthrew our government. They committed a coup on America. They control the gas prices, and Russia's responsible for our inflation.
Matt Stoller said that there's only $39 billion of trade between Russia and the United States of America, so economic sanctions are ultimately meaningless. Now, whether or not that's an oversimplification, you can decide for yourself whether or not you think the mainstream media and American government amplify the impact of the war between Russia and Ukraine to justify price hikes, economic inequality, intransigence in government. Do you think this is all as a result of the war between Russia and Ukraine? Or do you think there's ineptitude, inefficiency, and corruption elsewhere in American political culture?
Last time I checked, Russia couldn't get their good vodka into Trader Joe's. So I don't think they're really controlling everything like they say they are, okay? So the Democrats right now are in power. They have complete control of government. And like all politicians, they don't want to take the blame for anything.
This story from the Financial Times this weekend is a demonstration of how the Democrat Party is ultimately bereft of ideas and relies instead on trying to incite suspicion, doubt and hatred. And in the absence of being able to use Trump as a kind of scapegoat or lightning rod for negativity and doubt, and remember, I'm not a fan of Trump, I know a lot of you guys like him, is content to use Putin in the exact same role. Former Secretary of State and Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton said in an interview with the Financial Times published Friday that the US is on the precipice of losing our democracy. We're standing on the precipice of losing our democracy, and everything that everybody else cares about then goes out the window. It seems to me that there are ideas, words, and even physical buildings that are held up as sacrosanct, as representatives of a set of ideals that I no longer see in practice in American life. Like, what is this democracy that Hillary Clinton is talking about? Where is this fairness? Where is this justice? I know the world could get a lot worse. I know I'd rather live in America than China. I'd rather live in America than feudal Britain, but that doesn't mean that we should stop aspiring to create more democratic, fairer societies. In Clinton's view, Putin's only realistic path to victory in Ukraine would be Trump's re-election in 2024. If Trump had won in 2020, he would have pulled out of NATO. I have no doubt about that, she says. There's a few assumptions here. One, Why would Putin win the war in Ukraine if Trump was president? Well, how can you underwrite that statement by saying that there's collusion between Russia and Trump? Well, I think it's been proven that that simply wasn't the case. And I don't have any real reason to believe that NATO is unequivocally a positive force, far less that Trump would automatically leave NATO, although he frequently spoke relatively negatively about it.
They want you to blame everybody and everything or anybody and anything for the pain that you're feeling right now, except blame them, the people with the power right now. And so that's why everything comes back to Putin, because Putin is a proxy for their Trump hate.
Goddamn Putin made me fall off my bicycle.
What they don't want us to realize is that we have a unipolar government, right? So if you vote for Joe Biden, you're voting for Goldman Sachs. If you Mitch McConnell, the same thing. You're voting for our oligarchy. True. And they don't want you to know that. And as soon as people wake up that we've been being screwed by the same billionaires that control Joe Biden, that control the Republican Party, that's what scares them. They don't want me on your show talking to your audience, telling them that people on the left, we smell a rat. And we know that Joe Biden is completely controlled by the oligarchy and the corporations.
The kind of pledges that politicians make on their way into power, in their way into administration, suggest that they have incredible influence. We're going to give you a fairer, better America. We're going to solve these problems. But once in power, what they look for are convenient scapegoats to blame for their own inaction, because they know, of course, it's necessary to deploy any rhetoric at all to get into a position of power. But once there, nothing is going to change, because precisely as Jimmy Dore excellently explains there, they are at the service of the same oligarchical class as the Republican Party. Ultimately, if you want to change the quality of life for ordinary Americans or ordinary British people or ordinary people all over the world, we have to attack institutional corruption and the relationships that exist between unelected globalist bodies, big tech, big business, mainstream media, and whatever stooge state government happens to be operating in your country at this time.
Right now, the American people are paying the price. What are we paying the price for? Not for Putin's inflation, not for Putin's gas hike. This is Joe Biden's invasion. This is NATO's invasion. This is Joe Biden's policies. These are Joe Biden's policies that are wrecking the dollar, that are propping up the ruble to it's stronger than it's ever been.
You'll be astonished to learn that the sanctions against Russia mean that Russia is experiencing a kind of economic boom at the moment, and the real victims of economic sanctions against Russia are Americans. We'll do a story on that later this week.
And they're blaming a foreign country. Imagine if Trump did that. They'd be making jokes about it every night on the nightly news. Of course they're not. I mean, the nightly talk shows. But of course they're not. They're all coddling. You saw Jimmy Kimmel have to coddle that old man, the guy who probably got stuck in a couch before he left that place. This is and you know Joe Biden's not making the decisions.
It's nice to see Tucker Carlson just thinly smiling his way through Jimmy Dore's epic rant there. Also makes me think that I've got to go on Fox News. I mean, it's the only place where you're going to hear that kind of rhetoric. Why can't Jimmy Dore go on MSNBC and talk like that, or CNN and talk like that, for precisely the reasons he's outlined? It will be fantastic to see voices from the left, which you can see ultimately share a great many interests with Tucker Carlson's audience, because whether or not you traditionally vote for the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, ultimately I'm sure you're interested in your own individual freedom, collective freedom for your community, a degree of fairness, some control over your economic life, a right to pursue your own happiness, stuff that's actually enshrined in the Constitution. The minute we begin to recognize that we have more in common with one another than that which separates us, then we'll be much less easy to control. And I think this is central to American political life, the function of American media, and I think Jimmy Dore has outlined it beautifully there.
We all know that he's mentally impaired, and we all know that Kamala Harris isn't making those decisions because she also can't speak in clear sentences. So who is really running the country? Well, whoever runs the Democratic Party, which is a handful of billionaires, those are the ones. They don't want to take responsibility for that. They want you to blame your neighbor. They won't want you to be angry at the oligarchs or Fauci or Big Pharma or the media that controls you, that makes you think that essential medicines are poison. They want you to blame your neighbor. It's everybody is a Trumper or they're not. It's you're with us or against us. And that's the only message they have left. And then they have censorship left because they have failed, Tucker.
These are the kind of alliances we have to focus on. People from apparently opposite ends of a very narrow spectrum, coming together to talk about the points that we can all agree on. And doubtless there will be cultural and indeed political points of disagreement. That is why the principle of decentralization becomes vital. If you run your town and community in a particular way, and other people run their town and community in a particular way, why does it matter? As long as we leave one another alone. As long as there aren't centralized media forces, government and corporate forces continually generating tension, disempowering ordinary people to centralize and advance their own economic and cultural interests, then what does it matter if people have minor or indeed major disagreements about the way that their community should be run?
Why do you think it is that Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer are the leaders in the House and Nancy in the Senate, and Nancy is the leader in the... Because they're not leaders. Those people have negative charisma. I wouldn't ask Chuck Schumer directions to the freeway. Why are they the leaders? Because they're the ones who take the most money from the billionaire class that actually runs this country. They take the money from them and they disperse it to the other members of Congress, so they vote for them as leader, not because they're leaders, but because they're the most corrupt.
Man, is that true. Great, Jimmy Dore. Great to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
Jimmy Dore has appeared as a guest on our channel. For those of you who don't know, he's a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. His father was a cop. He's from an ordinary working family. He voted for Bernie Sanders. He may have been smeared as an anti-vaxxer, even though he's had the vaccine and is in fact just criticising the profiteering that went on in the pandemic. That's not conspiracy theory. You can look at the numbers. And I think it's interesting that the only place where a leftist pundit can go on TV and criticise the Democrat Party and inventory the nature of the corruption that we're currently experiencing is Fox News. I know Fox News is not without its problems. It's owned by Rupert Murdoch. Many of you will not be fans of Tucker Carlson. But the fact is, Jimmy Dore was just able to go on there and say that the Democrat Party is run by the same oligarchs that run the Republican Party. This is the fundamental point. The political choices that you're offered in America, that we're offered here in the UK, aren't choices at all. Whenever a political figure emerges that starts to offer genuine alternatives, i.e. ways for ordinary people to have a democratic impact on the governing of their nation, on the governing of their own lives, they are smeared, criticised, condemned, ignored. There are fewer and fewer ways for those voices to succeed within the mainstream media. That in itself is a demonstration of alliance between the state, corporations, big business, and the media. I'm grateful to be able to see conversations between Tucker Carlson and Jimmy Dore, who continues to be critical of a Democratic Party that has become little more than a mouthpiece for the same economic interests that have traditionally governed the Republican Party. Now, I know some of you are conservative and traditional and probably really like Tucker Carlson anyway, and I probably feel a more natural alliance with Jimmy Dore. But whatever your particular political persuasion is, I think it's absolutely vital that we start to formulate new ideas around how we can run our own lives, run our own community, and most importantly of all, get money and corruption out of politics so these fading and failing institutions become once again responsible to the people that pay for them and the people that elect their inhabitants. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either one of these ones. Remember, turn on the notification bell because YouTube is a big tech platform and we need to make sure that our daily videos are seen by you. If you're not a subscriber yet, subscribe right now, and please sign up to our mailing list. I do all sorts of fantastic live events both online and in the real world that you can attend. Most importantly of all, please stay free.